Hi guys, it's me, and I wanted to real quick do a video. Real quick. Who am I kidding? None of my videos are ever real quick. I've been getting a lot of emails recently after I did my 50 random things tag. One of the random things was that I've suffered with or from depression my whole adolescent life to most of my adult life. And I had a lot of people email me either saying that they related or, felt bad that I'd gone through all of that stuff, or asking basically, what does depression really feel like, because they feel like they are in a slump or feeling depressed at the time. And don't mind my hair. Today was a non-shower day. I just realized that it's just like I look like a... Yeah. Anyways, so I kind of just wanted to do a video on just the subject. And if you don't want to watch, then please just don't watch. Like, stop right now, because it's gonna be a oh poor me video, and it's gonna be a video that, either you're gonna really appreciate, or you're gonna not care about, or you're gonna think, oh, this girl's just a dramatic drama queen. But that's not my intention, so take it how you want. But this is for those people who emailed me, because you can only say so much in an email. Like, sometimes when I'm writing back to people's emails or writing a blog post, like, I feel so much more than what's coming out in my words as I'm typing. Sometimes I make vlogs just because I feel like I can really get my point across better than I can in any form of other communication. So instead of writing back to everybody individually, I just wanted to kind of just make this video so that you can just watch and listen to what parts you want or ignore what parts you want. Depression. I hate depression. It's ruined a lot of my life, and it's something that is very hard to cope with, because A, you don't really know if you're depressed. Like, for a long time when I was dealing with being a teenager, I didn't really know that I was depressed, but in the end I realized I was. I mean, it took me winding up, being suicidal, and then also winding up in the hospital to realize how depressed I really was. Also, what sucks about being depressed, especially if you're younger and you're either pretty, or you seem popular, or you're older and you have great kids and a great husband, or you have lots of money or whatever, being depressed sucks because nobody really takes you seriously when you say that you're sad or that you're, like, depressed, because they think, well, why should you be depressed? You're just overreacting. You're just being emo. You're just being this or that. I hate depression because it just sucks. It's misunderstood. It's by others, and it's misunderstood by the person who has it, and it's just an awful, awful, awful feeling. My bouts with depression started at a very young age. I was adopted, as you guys know. So I don't know if I was depressed as a child. I don't feel like I was. I mean, I know that I had a really hard time growing up because I was the youngest of 4, and my brothers were pretty hard on me. They were just, had their own issues, and, I think it's easy to take things out on the person underneath you. Shit rolls down a hill. I was at the end of the hill, so life was pretty difficult. Sometimes when we weren't getting along. But I was pretty happy as a child. We moved to where we are now when I was in 3rd grade, and that just hurt really bad because I lost all my friends. I had so many friends where we used to live, and all of a sudden my parents uprooted us, and I don't blame them for that, but to this day, I miss my friends, and I never made new friends at the place that we are now. I live in an area where, like, people come here, they have their babies, they die here, and then the babies stay here and die here. And, like, so when we got here, I was in 3rd grade, and it was really hard to become friends with anybody because they all knew each other for so long. Not only that, but I was very self-conscious because I was Asian. I grew up in a fairly white community, but I had lots of friends at the church that we went to because my dad was the minister of it, so I felt comfortable there. But then we moved to another predominantly white community, and I just felt uncomfortable. I was the only Asian person other than this other kid who had a lot of handicaps, and people would basically just make fun of me and him together, or say that we should date because we're both Korean, and it was just a really hard time. And I took that bullying or that hurt and I turned it into bullying back, and I wasn't the nicest person either. I did have some friends, but they were very superficial friends, I realize now, because none of them talk to me to this day. So that was hard. But I mean, I don't know, I was lonely a lot, like during the summer, but I still wasn't depressed. I wouldn't say I was depressed. I hit junior high, and that became pretty difficult for me because, again, I was still trying to find out who I was. I, again, was still lonely. I didn't really have any real friends. Bullying became a lot more apparent in junior high. The girls older than me would just pick on me relentlessly because I was Asian or flat-chested, and that really hurt. I think people misconstrued my want to belong so much and my want to make friends as kind of being overwhelming maybe, but whatever it was, that's when the bullying really began. I also found out when I was in junior high that I had been sexually abused when I was probably like 4 or 5 or 3, somewhere around that age, regularly, and I didn't remember. So when I found this out, and it was by a family member, so when I found this out, that was pretty hard. I was like 12 or 13 at the time, so sexually I was coming into puberty and like finding myself and all of that, so it was very confusing. I didn't feel like I had anybody to talk to because I didn't have any real friends, and then how do you tell another 13-year-old girl, like, oh, guess what I found out yesterday, you know? I didn't talk to my parents about it because it was just it's all messed up. I thought my parents knew, but they didn't. And then I just kind of held on to this resentment because I thought that they knew and they didn't help me. But it was just a really hard time. So I kind of just bottled that up and was just upset for a long time, just upset. And I think that probably caused a lot more damage than anything else that could have. I mean, I already was, dealing with abandonment and trust issues from being adopted at such an older age. I was 18 months. I was already dealing with not knowing who I was, and now even more so because, I find out this really traumatic thing happened to me whatever years ago, and I didn't remember it. So then I was dealing with that, on top of people picking on me. And so I just got really angry, And I tried to be okay. I tried to be okay and bottle it up, and I tried to just go along with my life because I was 13. I didn't know what else to do. So I entered high school still with all of this stuff going on inside me, and I couldn't tell anybody because I didn't think anybody would understand. And, I was really involved in high school. I tried to mask my pain and being super involved with things like dance or show choir and 3 different choir programs and varsity soccer and student council and French club, and I tried to just I just tried to be a part of things and make friends, and I made friends with the wrong people, because I think they were the only people who would have me. I think I burnt a lot of bridges over my time of being angry, and so when somebody accepted me, I just took it. I had a car in high school, so people wanted to be my friend, and I didn't care. I just was happy if somebody wanted to hang out with me. I tried sharing my hurt with these friends, and they didn't care. I mean, they were too young to care. I don't know why, but long story short, high school was just terrible for me. The more people picked on me or the more people called me names, the more angry I got. The older I got, the more confused I got because of just everything still going on with everything that I had found out when I was in junior high. I felt lost. I felt like I was more and more not knowing who I was because high school is where you find kind of a path, and I couldn't find a path because I didn't know what was behind me, if that makes sense. I still hadn't talked to my parents about anything. It was too hard because, again, I thought they had already known about it, so I felt like they should approach me. So that just grew into like this ball of resentment. I hated them because I felt like they should have protected me, or I felt like they should have come to me and helped me get through it, and they didn't. So I just hated them. And I took that out as rebelling, and I was so confused about everything that I just took it out into alcohol and hanging out with the wrong people and sleeping with the wrong people and just being I was just a terrible person. High school was just terrible. And nobody understood me. They all just thought I was a bitch for no reason. And how do you tell like a group of people why you're the way you are? Like,
Like, please be nice to me. I was adopted. I feel abandoned. I can't trust anybody. A family member physically and sexually abused me. Like, just please be nice to me and be my friend. Like, how do you tell, like, a group of high schoolers that? You can't. So I just became angry, and I did and said just terrible things to people. I got involved with the wrong people. And it just was terrible, and I was just depressed. I was so depressed. By my junior year, I had just let go of everything. I had given up kind of on trying to be friends with people. I closed myself off. I had quit all of the extracurricular activities that I was involved in. I stopped going to school because I started getting harassed so much that I didn't trust myself going to school. People just talked about me just viciously without even really knowing me. They started attacking my cell phone, calling and leaving just nasty messages, so I couldn't even turn my phone on. They started vandalizing my house. They started egging my car while it was in the driveway in the middle of winter so that the egg yolks would just freeze on and I couldn't get them off. And it got to be so much, and my parents kind of just chalked it up as, oh, they're just jealous, or it's just kids being kids. Finally, I got to the point where I was just so depressed that I couldn't handle anymore that I tried to kill myself. I took a bottle of, I don't remember what, and I just took them all. I got so scared, though, that I went to my mom after I'd already digested all of them, and she made, help me throw up, and I just sat there and cried to her. The next day, she took me to the school, and I met with the administrators, and I remember his name was Mr. Rupp. He said, well, I don't know what you want me to do about it. Can you prove who it was? All of my friends knew who it was. Some of them they were friends with. Some of them I can guarantee you were involved. Nobody wanted to tell on anybody. I felt abandoned. I felt just terrible. So my mom just said, if you're not going to help us, then I'm taking my daughter out. So I left. I went to the community college for a while, and the guy that I was dating, Ava's dad, I leaned on him a lot, even though he was an unhealthy relationship. But he was the only one I felt like that I had. But he was not very nice to me either. He cheated on me. He wasn't there for me when I needed him. And I just got really lonely, even more lonely, because now I wasn't going to school. I didn't have anybody who really wanted to talk to me. I didn't feel like I could trust anybody. I just got so depressed. I still was so angry with my parents. The next time that I tried to kill myself, I drank out of an unmarked liquor bottle with a friend, and a group of people, and I got really drunk. I told my friend that I needed to leave. I don't feel well. And she, ignored me because she was having fun with some guy, and I finally just left, and I passed out on the ground outside. I remember hitting the ground really hard, and my friend finally coming to get me and then taking me to the car and screaming my name. And I wound up in the emergency room with an alcohol level of 0.24, which is really high for my body weight. And I remember waking up to a doctor asking my mom, is she known to do drugs? And my mom said, no, my daughter doesn't do drugs. And I didn't do drugs. And I guess the person that was serving us had laced the alcohol with speed. I could have died. I could have been raped, which, wouldn't have been anything new to me, of course, but so many bad things could have happened to me. And I just didn't care, and I knew at that point that there was something wrong. I was just so sad. And I went to my parents finally, and I told I'm so sad, and I told them that I just hated myself. I hated being alive. I just wanted to That's when my mom tried to get me into counseling. I think I met with a psychologist, or I don't remember, whichever one can prescribe drugs. And I remember going to the first appointment and her basically putting me in front of a computer and saying, okay, you need to take this emotional assessment test. And I remember that all of the, they'd ask you a question, and then you're supposed to, click the face that you felt most related to your answer to that question. So there was, a sad face, a medium smile face, and a really happy face. And the test took, an hour. The next appointment, she just said, you know what, you seem depressed, and then he wrote me a prescription, and that was that. I didn't go back. I didn't feel like she understood. She didn't want to talk to me. She just wanted to drug me. After that, I got really, really, really just upset even more. I felt like my parents were just trying to pass me off to somebody who wanted to prescribe me a drug. I felt like they were just trying to deal with me until I was old enough to not have to be dealt with anymore. So I left home when I was 16 or 17 after I OD'd on alcohol, and I moved in with a friend who just, she wasn't a good friend. I mean, as much as she wants to say that she was or that she tried, she wasn't a good friend. Long story short, I just kind of lived the next year not talking to my parents and just being ridiculous, and I wound up pregnant with Ava's dad. After I found out I was pregnant, I realized, like, I needed to get my shit together. I was against abortion. I really struggled with adoption. I really just thought that maybe adoption was the answer because I was not equipped to have a baby emotionally. And I didn't want to ruin her life like I felt like I was ruining my own, so I said, okay, maybe adoption. So I talked to my mom, and she was very supportive. And then Ava's dad, didn't want her. He was just like, whatever. Then I find out that his parents said that if I was going to have put her up for adoption, then they were going to adopt her. So great. Like, my hands were completely tied. Like, I couldn't give away my daughter to her grandparents. I couldn't do that. I couldn't. And I'm not saying that I didn't want her because I didn't love her. And I didn't, I wanted to get rid of her. I didn't. None of those were true. It's just I felt like at that point I was so depressed that I didn't feel like I could ever raise a child. So I decided to keep her, and I told my parents, I need to find a place to go. Like, if my roommate or my friend won't stop smoking in the house, I can't stay here. So my parents and I went to family counseling, and we worked things out. We still didn't address the sexual abuse that I had encountered when I was younger. We didn't talk about any of that. I moved home. I had a very depressing pregnancy. Very depressing. Like, it was just terrible because Ava's father was just so mean to me. He was so mean. He would call me drunk, calling me a whore and a slut, and saying that so-and-so said that the baby wasn't his and all this other stuff. And after I'd broken up with him, he would call me drunk, saying, nobody's gonna want you. You're a piece of trash. Who do you think is gonna want you after you have a baby? And after one of the calls, I wanted to kill myself. I stood at the top of the steps. I was 6 or 7 months pregnant, and I just wanted to throw myself down the stairs. My parents were out of town. And I remember just standing there crying, ready to just step off. And then all of a sudden my brother walked in. He just had stopped by for no reason, just to say hi to my parents or drop something off. And he said, Kelly, what's wrong? And I just cried to him. I cried to him for hours. And the next day, I felt better. I felt like it was a sign, like my brother just randomly showing up the second before I wanted to just throw myself down the stairs. Like, he just showed up, and I felt like this is a sign. This is anyone telling me that I need to at least live to be, to be a parent to this child. After that, like, things kind of looked up. I felt like, okay, maybe I can do this. I had a very rough pregnancy. I was very depressed and lonely. I had Ava. I was still really depressed, and I don't think I ever really got out of this depression. And then when I say depression, I mean I was never really actually ever happy. I never really actually felt happy. The one happy day that I had was when I had Ava, and then that was that, because after that it just became hell being a single mom, and then dealing with her dad just constantly just fighting with me. Like, I was just depressed. I was never happy. I cried most nights. I was home alone. I was just depressed. Even when people thought I was happy, I was just not happy. I feel bad that Ava had to experience me like that. I feel bad that I wasn't a happy mother for her. I did my best, though. I would say that my depression probably lasted until I was like 22 or 23. I had gotten married to John by now. I was pregnant with Wyatt, and I had already talked a lot with John about just everything, and that helped a great deal, and he was always so caring to me, and, you know, knew how fragile I was. But then there came a time where finally I was like, I need to talk to my parents, because this was the big thing that was just holding me back. I mean, yes, I was still struggling with my adoption issues and everything like that and being lonely, but my biggest thing was just my parents. I felt like there was just a crack in our relationship because of the sexual abuse. So I finally talked to him, and that's when I found out that they didn't know about any of it. For like 10 years, 10 years I spent just hating them because I felt like they didn't help me, and this whole time they didn't know, you know? And that was a huge changing point for me in my adulthood. That was a huge changing point for me. They gave me the strength to forgive them and to reconcile all my issues, and they gave me the strength to stand up to my abuser and put my foot down and say that what you did was wrong. And after doing that, like, for the first time, I felt happy again, like a true happiness. After that, you know, I felt like I was kind of unstoppable. I'd gotten my GED, which really made me proud. I, you know, fixed relationships with a lot of people in my life. I wrote a lot of I'm sorry's to people. And that's when I decided to just be a better person. I wanted to be a better person because the person that I was just terrible, and part of me felt like, yes, I can blame that on the depression, but at the same time, maybe that was why I was depressed as well, because I was just so terrible, you know? So that's why I'm so open now as a person, and that's why I'm so just, I don't know, just let it all out, because I'm so sick of hiding things. I'm so sick of lying. I'm so sick of pretending like I'm something that I'm not, because I feel like I did that so much when I was younger that it's just, that was what was holding me back. And I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm a good person. I've worked really hard to be the person that I am now. So for the past, 3-4 years since I, you know, healed that part of my life, I can honestly say that I probably have not been depressed. I did suffer from some postpartum depression after my 2 kids were born, but that's a hormonal issue, and I was susceptible to it because I had suffered depression before. But, you know, having a great support system and having my kids was a huge reminder that I needed to get out of it. I needed to find a way to deal with it. If you want to know what depression feels like for me, I'm not saying this is what it feels like for everybody, but for me, depression just felt empty. I felt so empty. I felt like if I had 1 second by myself, I was going to just cry and not stop crying. A lot of times I would just stay in bed on the weekends and I didn't have Ava and I didn't have to work. I would just stay in bed all day long and all night long and just stare at the ceiling or watch some mind-numbing, sitcom just to get me through the next whatever hours until I had Ava back and a reason to do something. I felt like living was just really hard. Even still to this day, I sometimes feel like living is just really hard, you know, getting up and taking a shower and doing anything is just so hard, you know, and I have those bad days still, but they're not as terrible as they used to be, because what that used to happen was it was every day. Now it's like maybe once a month or twice a month, or sometimes I'll go a whole month not feeling that way. There was a quote that I came across that said, you know, the hardest thing you can do in your life is live. And it's so true, because all those times that I tried to kill myself when I was younger, it was because I was trying to escape the hell and the difficulty of living. It was an easy out. Living is just so much harder, you know? And I'm not trying to say that people who have done that, if you have a family member who has done that, I'm not saying that they're terrible people. But for me, killing myself would have just been the easy way out. That would have been the cop-out. And I'm so happy that I didn't succeed either of the 3 times. But living is hard, you know, it's hard. It's just hard. the things that got me through any of my periods of being depressed was talking. I think the hardest thing about being depressed is that people don't know how to talk to other people. Like, they don't know how to talk to other people. I don't know what happened in society where people either are so selfish that they don't want to listen to other people, or they're so blinded that they don't see that somebody else is suffering. But for some reason it's like that. Like, I'm lucky because I have a very understanding family, and I'm lucky because I have a very amazing husband that I can just talk to whenever I feel sad. And I have really good friends now that I can just talk to. But before I didn't. And a lot of people don't have that. And I think that's why I started blogging and why I started being so honest about things, because I know people, not everybody has somebody to talk to, because some people just suck at listening. And that's really what just helps you through, is not having more money, not being prettier, not having the nicest things or buying things. What gets you through it is talking to somebody, and knowing that you're okay. You're not abnormal, you're not alone. That was the biggest thing, is I just felt like, why am I so miserable? Like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so miserable? Because I remember people, like these girls that I went to high school with, being like, oh, she's so emo, God, like, there's nothing wrong with her. Like, why is she so blah, blah? Or people just not misunderstanding people's being mean or their attitudes. Like, I don't know. I started blogging because I wanted to be able to share, because that way maybe somebody out there would be able to relate when they needed to relate, Depression really sucks, and it's a very serious thing. And like I said, it doesn't matter if your life seems perfect or somebody else's life seems perfect. They might be hurting just as much as somebody else or yourself. I think if I would have just talked to my parents earlier, I think if I would have had a really good friend in high school or an adult that I trusted that I could talk to, I think things could have turned out a lot different for me. I'm not saying that I wish things would have turned out different, because obviously I love what I have right now, even though it's hard some days. But teen pregnancy is never, never, never a good thing. I mean, the babies, yes, they're great. But getting pregnant as a teenager is not. I don't care what people say, and people are going to hate me or dislike this video because I'm saying this, but coming from a teen mom, it doesn't matter. Babies should not be having babies. And I think that if I would have coped with my depression sooner, that wouldn't have happened to me. I feel very blessed to have Ava. But if I could change how it happened, I would. Depression really sucks, and it's very real, and I think that if people can just talk it out with somebody else or relate to somebody else, it might help. I think that was what helped me the most. And I don't know exactly, I kind of got off track with this video, trying to tell you guys just my history with depression. So I apologize, but my whole point to this is, even if people seem really happy on the outside, doesn't mean that they're happy on the inside. And if somebody's mean, instead of just being like, oh, what a bitch, why don't you think maybe there's something wrong? Maybe she's hurting, or maybe there's some other reason. I've really struggled with forgiving people for things. But I know that I was a mean person because of my depression. So I've really tried to forgive people. But depression is very real, and it's not something to be taken lightly, and it's definitely not something to overlook or sweep under a rug. If somebody's hurting, they're hurting. Their feelings should be legitimate. They should be validated. It shouldn't be any question at all of whether or not they're true, because I feel like that's why people hurt for so long, is nobody takes them seriously. So if you're depressed, I want to give you a big hug, because I know how hard it is. But know that it's so much better to figure out a way to feel better and to live your life again. Even though I struggle, like I said, some days. The days where I don't are so worth it, So if you're depressed and you're feeling very low, just remember that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, there really is. So the one thing that I can say is just talk to someone. If you're upset about something, even if it's like a little fight with somebody, just talk to them. I think that's what people don't do anymore, and they should, is just talk. You know, tell somebody how you feel. You know, that's probably why people don't like me here, is because I just tend to blurt stuff out. It just comes out like word vomit. I can't help it. But it's just because whenever I used to bottle stuff up, it just destroyed me. And I'm a real person. Real people have opinions. Real people have feelings. Real people just have emotions, and it's okay. And I think that a lot of people who get depressed, they don't let that out enough. Anyways, I don't know where that was going, but I hope this answered a lot of your guys' questions. I hope that, I don't know what I hope for. I don't know what I hope that you take away from this. I guess what I hope that you take away from this is that I suffered through a lot of depression and have been at a lot of low points in my life, and I managed to get out of them. And I had help doing it, but I found that help, and I'm happy now. I mean, I'm not happy all the time, but I'm happy. So if I can do it, you can do it, kind of. Anyways, I'm gonna go, because now I've rambled for a long time, and I don't know what you guys think of me now, but yeah. So I'll talk to you guys all later in my next video. Bye. Oh, big virtual hug to all of you.